Rare footage of Daigo actually angry. Just as turtle style, overcome Rao, now on the verge of putting Daigo down 1-0.
Damn it!
Hey, come on, I'm trying to write a postcard here.
OMG, I'm totally lead sauce. You're the noob source. I'm lead bone source. Noob sauce.
Okay. Why don't you go finish that duel with that warlock over there?
OMG, death coil, WTF, fear bombing noob. Oh, Blizzard. God, hacks. Oh my god. What is it? Non-crit for 2K. Oh, hacks! Fear bomb!
That's not really a game model. Anyway, I guess you kinda lost that one.
Blizzard! WTF!
Alright, look. I hear that sort of thing all the time, and it's really getting old. Blaming something else for your own shortcoming isn't going to fix anything. Okay, I'll elaborate. In fact, this is probably the biggest piece of advice I can ever offer. Ready? You can win every fight. You can beat Soul Link Warlocks. You can beat 10 Soul Link Warlocks at once, naked. Either you've disconnected or you don't believe me. Look, it may not always be actually true, but that's how you have to think. You can win every fight. If you lose, think of it as your fault, not the game's. Whining and getting upset over the game won't make it magically change just for you. That's not to say you should beat yourself up over losing. Never do that. Still, look back on the fight you just lost and think to yourself, I could have won that. What should I have done differently? If you think like this, you'll figure out things you may not have thought of before. Okay, here's a demonstration. I'll go fight that warlock you just lost to. Alright, so let's take a look at the situation. This warlock is what is commonly referred to as the Drain Tank spec. This means he has Soul Link and Siphon Life. I want to take a quick moment to point out all the buffs that I have on. A Warlock's Fell Hunter can only devour magic every 8 seconds. The general idea is that the more buffs we have on, the longer it's going to take the Fell Hunter to eat through them. For example, here we have 6 buffs. If it takes the Fell Hunter 8 seconds to eat through each one, it's going to take him 48 seconds to get through all 6 of these buffs. This means we'll have a better chance of having Ice Barrier stay up later on in the fight. Alright, I'm going to tell you right now that I lose this fight. We're going to look at it, see what I did wrong, and see how I can correct it. My basic strategy going into this is to put out as much damage as possible while trying to avoid fear and save Ice Block for Death Coil. The fight has started and I've already made a huge mistake. I don't have my Water Elemental out. I Fire Blast it to start, just so I can get it on cooldown and start using it as much as possible. That part was a good idea. However, I got Spell Locked right away because it's on autocast. While this is generally a bad thing to do for the Warlock, in this case it screwed me over because I tried to summon my Elemental while I was silenced. I hit my summon macro and actually didn't realize that my Elemental hadn't come out, so I continued trying to deal damage. Besides that, I'm not actually doing too badly so far. Death Coil means Ice Block. I was a little bit slow on it, but it wasn't too bad. Notice the Drain Life immunity right there. He tried to drain life, which is the whole point of the Drain Tank spec. We want to avoid that as much as possible, so when he tries it again, like right there, we want to counterspell. We get silenced for a moment, and now we're in a lot of trouble. We don't have Ice Block, and our counterspell is on cooldown. As soon as he can, he's going to drain life again, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And there it is. So what did we do wrong here? We're going to eventually reach this point no matter what we do, where we have no counterspell and no Ice Block. We could Cold Snap, but Hypothermia is stopping us from Ice Blocking again, at least for the moment. Really, the problem we had here is that we just didn't put out enough damage fast enough. Look at his life total. We've only gotten him down to half by the time we've gotten to this point. Right from the start, we didn't have a Water Elemental, and we just didn't put enough pressure on him. And while we did counter his early moves, he had enough time to just simply outlast us until we had nothing we could do against him. At this point, he's draining life fast enough to outpace our damage, and with all the dots on us, we basically have no chance from here. So let's try this again. This time, we're going to bring out our water elemental right from the start and try and put on a lot more pressure than we did last time. Our goal is to have him a lot lower by the time we get to the point where we have no counterspell and no ice block. Even then, it's going to be hard to outpace his drain life, so ideally, we want to have him actually dead before we ever hit that point. As you'll see, the added damage of the water elemental and the shatter combos that he allows us to do will make a huge difference in the outcome of this fight. Now here's a very interesting thing about Warlock casts. Unless the Warlock is Destruction, he has no way of stopping any kind of pushback on his spell. Unfortunately, this might not be true for Fear, because there's a PvP glove bonus that has a 50% resistance to pushback. However, for something like, say, Immolate, which he's trying to cast right now, if you can create a quick flurry of spells, it's going to push his spell back quite a bit while you're able to deal damage very safely. Here we're going to use Frost Nova, Ice Lance, and the pet is going to get in an attack. He just took 3 interrupts. By the time he actually gets this off, it's taken him 2.4 extra seconds to cast. This means it took almost 3 times as long as it would normally. In the meantime, we've taken over a third of his life away, and we're still at full. We still have Ice Block and Counterspell ready for any drain lives. Keep putting on the pressure, and there's the Death Coil. We still have Counterspell, and we're going to save that for any Shadow spell, most likely Drain Life. He doused us up again a little bit, but he's in panic mode now, and needs to drain to stay alive. We Counterspell that, and we're in really good shape. In fact, let's take a look at the last fight and see where we were at when we hit this point before. In the last fight, he had about half of his life left, which was enough to let him survive the 8 seconds of Counterspell, and come through with a Drain Life that we could do nothing against. Another interesting thing to note is that we were about at the same life total ourselves. It was really our damage output that we needed to change, and that's what we did for this fight. We get silenced again as soon as we counterspell, but we still have 6 seconds to do as much damage as we possibly can. And there, we just beat a Soul Link Warlock. See, it is possible. I would like to point out that a Warlock will have an advantage over a Mage. Just because you can win doesn't mean you'll always win. The Warlock does have to make a mistake, like that Immolate that we saw in the last fight. However, you need to be ready to capitalize on those mistakes. For example, when he tried to cast Immolate, we sent a flurry of spells at him to make it take 3 times as long to cast. Let's take a look at an Affliction Warlock. The basic idea remains the same. Do damage, Ice Block and Death Coil, and do more damage until they're dead. Since I'm undead, I can just will the Forsaken out of the opening Fear. He also spell locks very early, which made counterspelling kind of hard. The Fellhunter Silence lets him get that unstable Affliction off, and we're getting dotted up pretty quick. There's not much we can do, but we have Ice Block ready. We get Death Coiled, and we Ice Block just after Shadow Burn. The timing wasn't too good on that. As a quick note, it's good to not always immediately come out of Ice Block as soon as you go into it, especially against a Warlock. Here he's casting Fear, but since we're already in an Ice Block, why not just stay in it until it's done casting? He tries to chain cast to catch us on the next one, but we're out so soon that we can counterspell it. We also get our Water Elemental out, since now he can't Howl of Terror. Speaking of which, whenever you're facing an Affliction Warlock or a Priest, it's always a good idea to get as much distance as possible between yourself and the Elemental. This will stop their AoE fears from getting both of you. Either they get the Elemental and you're safe, or they get you and your Elemental is safe. The only control option the Warlock has left is basically Howl of Terror. We still have our Trinket because we used Will of the Forsaken before. There's the Howl of Terror, and he only got us because our Elemental was safely away. We use our Trinket and go right back to DPS. You may also notice he just popped a Hellstone. Now he's going to get a Drain Life in, but at this point he's so far behind that he panics and instead tries to Shadow Burn again. We also had our Counterspell about to come up, so it wasn't a big deal either way. And there you go. We just beat an Affliction Warlock that just used a Hellstone and 2 Shadow Burns. So did that help convince you at all? So you're just going to ignore me?